My life was meticulously curated, a gallery of beige. Beige walls in my apartment, beige sweaters in my closet, and a beige existence stretching out before me like an endless, uninspired landscape. I worked as a junior data analyst at some forgettable midtown firm, crunching numbers until my eyes blurred, then retreated to my equally unremarkable apartment. Weekends were spent catching up on sleep and rereading the same dog-eared novels. Excitement was a forgotten language. Until she roared back into my life. Josie. Just the name tasted like ash and old gasoline on my tongue. She lived next door. Had always lived next door. And had always been my personal brand of torment. I remembered her from childhood, a whirlwind of scraped knees, ripped jeans, and a defiant sneer that could curdle milk. She was everything I wasn't. Loud, fearless, and unapologetically herself. While I hid behind books and my mother's skirts, Josie was out there, climbing trees, racing bikes, and generally wreaking havoc on our quiet suburban street. And more often than not, that havoc was directed at me. My earliest memory of her involved a mud pie. Not just any mud pie, mind you, but one carefully crafted with extra dirt and a generous helping of earthworms, shoved right into my face as I sat on the sidewalk, attempting to draw a particularly ambitious flower. I was maybe 6. The humiliation, the gritty taste, the sheer audacity of it all, it was seared into my memory. As we got older, the pranks evolved. My carefully braided pigtails would be snipped off during recess. My homework mysteriously vanished. Once, she even locked me in the school's supply closet, leaving me to sob amongst the mops and disinfectant until the janitor found me. I tried to avoid her, of course, to become invisible whenever she was near. But Josie seemed to have a radar for my misery. She'd find me, always with that infuriating smirk on her face, ready to unleash another wave of terror. Now, years later, the sight of her still sent a shiver of unease down my spine. She was leaning against her beat-up motorcycle, a vintage Triumph Bonneville that coughed and sputtered like a grumpy dragon. Josie looked like she'd been poured into her faded jeans, the denim clinging to her curves in a way that made me inexplicably uncomfortable. Her black tank top revealed glimpses of tattoos snaking around her arms, intricate designs of roses, skulls, and something that looked suspiciously like a snarling wolf. She was everything my mother warned me about. Trouble. Her hair, once a choppy mess of dark curls, was now styled into a sleek undercut, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face. Piercing blue eyes, framed by thick lashes, scanned the street with a predatory intensity. Those eyes landed on me, and a slow, knowing smile spread across her lips. Well, she drawled, her voice a low, husky rumble that vibrated through the air. If it isn't Luna, still hiding behind those big glasses? I clutched my purse tighter, my heart hammering against my ribs. Josie. I managed to croak out, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. Long time no see, sunshine, she said, pushing off the motorcycle and sauntering towards me. You haven't changed a bit. That wasn't entirely true. I'd try to change. To outgrow the timid, awkward girl she remembered. But standing here, facing her, I felt like that little girl again, covered in mud and shame. What do you want, Josie? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of motor oil and something else, something subtly sweet and intoxicating. Just saying hello, Luna. Is that a crime? For you it usually is, I muttered under my breath. Josie chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent an unexpected flutter through my stomach. Ouch, Luna. Still holding a grudge after all these years. Some things are hard to forget, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, she said, her eyes locking on mine. Or maybe. She leaned in closer, her breath warm against my ear. Some things are meant to be revisited. And with that, she turned and swung her leg over the motorcycle, revving the engine with a deafening roar. The sound echoed through the street, a primal scream that both terrified and strangely thrilled me. She glanced back at me, a wicked glint in her eyes, before speeding off into the night. I stood there, frozen in place, long after the sound of her motorcycle faded away. Her words hung in the air, a tantalizing promise and a chilling threat. Some things are meant to be revisited.
What did she mean by that?
And why, despite everything, did a part of me desperately want to find out? Sleep offered no escape. Josie haunted my dreams, a shape-shifting specter of leather and gasoline. One moment she was the taunting child, flinging mud and insults. The next, she was the alluring woman from last night, her eyes burning with an intensity that made my pulse race. I woke up tangled in my sheets, heart pounding, the scent of motor oil a phantom lingering in my nostrils. The next few days passed in a blur of anxious anticipation. I found myself constantly glancing out the window, half expecting, half dreading Josie's return. Every rumble of an engine, every flash of headlights, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. My carefully constructed routine began to unravel. I lost my appetite, couldn't concentrate at work, and found myself snapping at my colleagues. Evenings were the worst. The silence of my apartment amplified my unease. I tried to distract myself with books, movies, anything to keep Josie's voice from echoing in my head. But nothing worked. Her words, "Some things are meant to be revisited," had burrowed their way into my subconscious, a persistent, nagging itch I couldn't scratch. One evening, as I was attempting to choke down a bland salad, there was a knock on my door. My heart leaped into my throat. I knew who it was. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed down my hair and cautiously opened the door. Josie stood there, leaning against the doorframe with that infuriatingly casual pose. She was wearing a different tank top, this one showcasing a delicate tattoo of a hummingbird hovering over a blossom. Her jeans were ripped at the knees, revealing glimpses of sun-kissed skin. She looked like she'd just rolled out of bed, but somehow, she still managed to exude an effortless cool that made me feel hopelessly frumpy in my oversized pajamas. "Hey, Luna," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Got a minute?" I hesitated. "What do you want, Josie?" "Thought you might be hungry," she replied, holding up a greasy paper bag. "Brought you some takeout from Tony's. They make the best damn pizza in the city." Tony's. It was a hole-in-the-wall pizzeria on the other side of town, a place I'd always been too intimidated to try. It was exactly the kind of place Josie would frequent. "I'm not really hungry," I lied, my stomach growling in protest. Josie raised an eyebrow. "Sure you aren't. I saw you practically picking at that rabbit food earlier." I glared at her. "It's called a salad, Josie." "Whatever. Just take the pizza, Luna. I don't want it to go to waste." I sighed.
"Fine.
"But I'm not inviting you in." Josie shrugged. "Suit yourself." She handed me the bag, her fingers brushing against mine. A jolt of electricity shot up my arm. "Thanks," I mumbled, taking the bag. "No problem," she said, lingering in the doorway. "Hey, Luna?" "Yeah." "I know I wasn't exactly a saint back in the day," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "And I know I probably scared the hell out of you. But I'm not that person anymore." I stared at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "How do I know that?" Josie smiled, a genuine, vulnerable smile that transformed her face. "You don't. You'll just have to take my word for it." She paused, then added, "Or maybe you could give me a chance to prove it to you." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway with the warm pizza in my hands and a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirling in my head. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. What was I supposed to do? Could I actually trust her? Could I forgive her for the years of torment? And, perhaps more importantly, could I resist the undeniable pull I felt towards her? The smell of the pizza wafted up from the bag, a tempting invitation. I looked at it, then back at the closed door. Maybe, just maybe, giving Josie a chance wasn't the worst idea in the world. After all, what did I have to lose? Besides my carefully curated, beige existence. I opened the bag and pulled out a slice of pizza. The cheese was melted and gooey, the pepperoni crisp and spicy. I took a bite, and a moan escaped my lips. It was, without a doubt, the best damn pizza I'd ever tasted. And as I savored the flavor, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to step outside my comfort zone and embrace the unknown. Even if that unknown was a tattooed, motorcycle-riding woman who used to make my life a living hell. The pizza was a peace offering, a fragile bridge across the chasm of our shared history. And I, against my better judgment, decided to cross it. The next day, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do, seeking Josie out. It was Saturday, and the sun was beating down on our street. I knew where to find her. The rhythmic clang of metal on metal led me to her garage, a cramped space overflowing with tools, spare parts, and the unmistakable scent of motor oil. The door was open, revealing Josie hunched over her motorcycle, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was wearing a greasy tank top and a pair of worn-out overalls, her hands covered in grime. Even like that, she was captivating. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple, and she wiped it away with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of grease on her cheek. I hesitated at the entrance, unsure of what to say. "Josie," I called out, my voice barely audible above the clatter of her tools. She looked up, startled. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Luna? What are you doing here?" I wanted to thank you for the pizza," I stammered, feeling awkward and out of place in her chaotic domain. Josie grinned, wiping her hands on a rag. "You're welcome. Did you like it?" "It was amazing," I admitted, unable to resist a small smile. "Seriously, the best pizza I've ever had." "Told you," she said, her eyes sparkling. "So, what brings you to my humble abode?" She gestured around the garage with a sweep of her hand. "Prepare to get your hands dirty?" I shuddered. "I don't think so. I'm not exactly mechanically inclined." "That's an understatement," Josie chuckled. "You look like you'd faint at the sight of a carburetor." "Probably," I agreed. There was an awkward silence, broken only by the buzzing of a nearby bee. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, feeling the urge to flee. "So," Josie said, breaking the silence, "what else did you want to say?" I took a deep breath. "I wanted to ask you about what you said the other night." Her expression turned serious. "About what?" "About giving you a chance," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "To prove that you've changed." Josie stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. And I'm willing to consider it," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "But I need to know, are you really different, Josie? Are you really not going to, torment you?" she finished, a hint of sadness in her voice.
No, Luna.
"I promise. I wouldn't do that to you. Not anymore." "Why not?" I asked, my voice trembling. Josie hesitated, her eyes flickering away from mine. Because I regret it," she said softly. "I regret everything I did to you. I was a stupid, insecure kid, and I took it out on you. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." Her sincerity was palpable, a stark contrast to the brash confidence she usually exuded. I wanted to believe her, desperately. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, Josie. I'll give you a chance." A slow smile spread across her face, a smile that reached her eyes and made them sparkle like sapphires. "Really? Really?" I confirmed, trying to ignore the butterflies fluttering in my stomach. "Great," she said, clapping her hands together. "So, what do you want to do?" I shrugged. "I don't know. What do you usually do?" "Well," she said, her eyes twinkling mischievously, "I was just about to take the Bonneville out for a spin. Wanna come?" My heart skipped a beat. "On the motorcycle?" "Yeah," she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "You scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. Josie laughed. "That's half the fun. Come on, Luna. Live a little." Before I could protest, she grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the motorcycle. The leather seat was hot beneath my fingers, the chrome gleaming in the sunlight. It was a far cry from my beige apartment and my predictable routine. "Here," Josie said, handing me a helmet. "Put this on. Safety first." I took the helmet, my hands shaking. It smelled of leather and gasoline, a heady, intoxicating scent that filled my senses. As I strapped it on, I couldn't help but wonder what I was getting myself into. Josie swung her leg over the motorcycle and revved the engine. The sound was deafening, a primal roar that vibrated through my entire body. "Ready?" she shouted over the noise. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Ready," I lied. Josie grinned, and with a final rev of the engine, we were off. The wind whipped through my hair, the world blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors. I clung to Josie's waist, my knuckles white. Fear and exhilaration mingled in my chest, a potent cocktail that left me breathless. As we sped down the open road, I realized that I wasn't just giving Josie a chance. I was giving myself a chance too. A chance to break free from my carefully constructed cage, to embrace the unknown, and to finally, truly live. And even though I was terrified, a part of me was also excited. Because for the first time in a long time, my life felt vibrant. And it was all thanks to the tattooed, motorcycle-riding woman who used to make my life a living hell. The motorcycle ride was a sensory overload, a baptism by wind and gasoline. At first, I clung to Josie like a barnacle, my eyes squeezed shut, every muscle in my body tense. But as we sped along, something shifted within me. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it was tempered by a growing sense of exhilaration. The wind buffeted my face, the sun warmed my skin, and the world rushed by in a blur of green and blue. It was a feeling of pure, unadulterated freedom. Josie seemed to sense my change in mood. She leaned back slightly, her body relaxing against mine. "You okay back there, Luna?" she shouted over the wind. I hesitated, then yelled back, "I think so." She chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through my chest.
Good.
"Hold on tight. We're just getting started." And she was right. The ride became more daring, the turn sharper, the speed faster. I found myself loosening my grip, opening my eyes, and even daring to lean into the curves. I was still scared, but it was a good kind of scared, the kind that made me feel alive. After what felt like hours, Josie finally pulled over to the side of the road. We were on a hilltop overlooking the city, the sprawling metropolis spread out before us like a glittering carpet. I took off the helmet, my hair a tangled mess, my face flushed. "Wow," I said, breathless. "That was intense." Josie finished, a knowing smile on her face. "Yeah," I agreed. "Intense is definitely one word for it." "How about liberating?" she suggested. I looked at her, surprised. "Yeah," I said softly. "Liberating too." We stood there for a moment, just breathing in the fresh air and taking in the view. The silence was comfortable, a stark contrast to the awkward tension that had permeated our earlier encounters. "Thanks, Josie," I said finally, "for taking me." "Anytime, Luna," she replied, her eyes meeting mine. "I thought you could use a little escape." "I did," I admitted. "More than you know." Josie leaned against the motorcycle, her gaze fixed on the city below. "So," she said after a moment, "what do you want to do now?" I hesitated. I could suggest going back to my apartment, back to my safe, predictable routine. But something inside me rebelled against the idea. I wanted more. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "What do you want to do?" Josie turned to me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I know a great little diner a few miles from here. They make the best milkshakes in the state. Want to check it out?" A milkshake. It sounded so simple, so normal. And yet, with Josie, even the most mundane activity felt like an adventure. "Okay," I said, my heart skipping a beat. "Let's do it." The diner was a classic, straight out of a 1950s movie. Red vinyl booths, chrome accents, and a jukebox blaring oldies. Josie seemed completely at home, sliding into a booth and chatting with the waitress like they were old friends. I, on the other hand, felt like a fish out of water. "What'll it be, ladies?" the waitress asked, her voice gravelly but kind. "I'll take a chocolate milkshake," Josie said, without even looking at the menu. "And she'll have..." She turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "Vanilla," I said, feeling suddenly shy. The waitress nodded and shuffled off to fill our order. Josie leaned back in the booth, her eyes fixed on me. "So," she said, a playful smile on her face. "What do you think?" "About what?" I asked, feeling flustered. "About all of this," she said, gesturing around the diner.
About me.
"About us." I took a deep breath. "I don't know what to think, Josie," I admitted. "This is all a lot to take in." "I know," she said softly. "I'm not trying to rush you, Luna. I just want you to know that I'm serious about this. About trying to be friends. About maybe even more." My heart skipped a beat. "More?" I echoed, my voice barely audible. Josie nodded, her eyes locking on mine. "Yeah, Luna."
More.
"I'm not going to lie. I'm attracted to you. I have been for a while." My cheeks flushed. But you used to hate me," I stammered. "I know," she said, her expression turning serious. "And I was an idiot. I was jealous of you, Luna. You were smart and kind, and you had your whole life figured out. I was just a mess. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings, so I lashed out." "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said, my voice trembling. "I know it doesn't," she said, reaching across the table and taking my hand. Her touch sent a jolt of electricity through my veins. "But I'm trying to make amends, Luna. I'm trying to show you that I'm not that person anymore." I looked at her hand, her callous fingers intertwined with mine. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. It felt intimate. "I don't know, Josie," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared." "I know you are," she said, squeezing my hand gently. "But you don't have to be. I'm not going to hurt you, Luna. I promise. I just want to get to know you. The real you. The you that you've been hiding from the world." Her words resonated deep within me, striking a chord I didn't even know existed. I had been hiding for so long, afraid to show my true self to anyone. But Josie saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. The waitress arrived with our milkshakes, breaking the spell. We pulled our hands apart, our cheeks flushed. "Here you go, ladies," the waitress said, placing the milkshakes in front of us. "Enjoy." We both mumbled our thanks and took a tentative sip of our milkshakes. The vanilla was sweet and creamy, a comforting contrast to the turmoil raging within me. As I looked at Josie, her eyes sparkling in the dim light of the diner, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could continue down the path I had always been on, the safe, predictable path that led to nowhere. Or I could take a chance, step into the unknown, and see where this unexpected connection with Josie might lead. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. The diner became our sanctuary, a neutral ground where we could shed our past baggage and build something new. We met there almost every evening, after my monotonous workday and Josie's unpredictable shifts at the garage. We'd talk for hours, about everything and nothing. I learned about her childhood, her struggles, her dreams of opening her own custom motorcycle shop. She learned about my love for literature, my hidden aspirations to write, my crippling fear of failure. With each passing day, the wall between us crumbled a little more. I started to see beyond the tattooed exterior, beyond the tough persona, and glimpse the vulnerable, compassionate woman beneath. She, in turn, seemed genuinely fascinated by my quiet world, peppering me with questions about my books, my colleagues, my strange fascination with data analysis. One night, as we were lingering over our milkshakes, Josie asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Why do you wear those glasses, Luna?" I blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't need them," she said, reaching across the table and gently taking my glasses off my face. "You have perfect vision." I felt exposed, vulnerable without my familiar shield. I just like them," I stammered. Josie studied my face, her eyes searching mine. "No, you don't. You hide behind them. You hide behind your books, your clothes, your job. You're afraid to let people see the real you." Her words stung, but they also resonated with a painful truth. I had been hiding for so long, afraid to be judged, afraid to be hurt. Maybe you're right, I said softly, looking down at my hands. Josie gently lifted my chin, forcing me to meet her gaze. It's okay to be scared, Luna, she said, her voice gentle. But you can't let fear control your life. You're too amazing to hide. She paused, then added, besides, you look way better without them. My cheeks flushed. You think so? Josie grinned, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I know so. You have beautiful eyes, Luna. You should show them off. She handed me my glasses back, but I didn't put them on. Instead, I slipped them into my purse, feeling a small but significant weight lift from my shoulders. That night, as I walked home, I felt different. Lighter. More confident. I wasn't hiding anymore. Or at least I was trying not to. The next step was even more daunting. Josie had invited me to a party at her friend's garage, a gathering of bikers, mechanics, and other assorted misfits. It was a far cry from my usual Friday night of reading and solitude. I almost bailed. I spent hours agonizing over what to wear, what to say, how to act. I considered pretending to be sick, making up a family emergency, anything to avoid the social minefield that awaited me. But then I thought of Josie, of her genuine smile, her unwavering support, her belief in me. And I knew that I couldn't let her down. I had to face my fears, step outside my comfort zone, and embrace the unknown. So I took a deep breath, put on my most daring outfit, and headed over to Josie's friend's garage. The scene that greeted me was overwhelming. The garage was packed with people, the air thick with cigarette smoke, the music blaring from a makeshift sound system. Bikers with leather jackets and tattoos mingled with mechanics in greasy overalls, laughing and shouting over the music. I felt instantly out of place, like a porcelain doll in a biker bar. Josie found me huddled near the entrance, my eyes wide with fear. She took my hand, her touch reassuring. Hey, she said, her voice gentle. You made it. Yeah, I said, my voice barely audible. I did. You okay? She asked, her eyes searching mine. You look a little overwhelmed. I am, I admitted. This is a lot. Josie smiled. Don't worry. I'll stick with you. You won't be alone. She led me through the crowd, introducing me to her friends. They were a motley crew, but they were surprisingly welcoming. They asked me about my job, my interests, my relationship with Josie. They didn't judge me for my quiet nature or my lack of experience with motorcycles. They just accepted me for who I was. As the night wore on, I started to relax. I even managed to have a few conversations without stammering or blushing. I drank a beer, my first ever, danced to the music, badly, and even laughed at a few of the jokes, some of which I didn't understand. At one point, Josie pulled me aside, her eyes shining with pride. See, she said, her voice soft. I told you could do it. I smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. Yeah, I said. I guess you did. She leaned in closer, her breath warm against my ear. You're amazing, Luna, she whispered. Don't ever forget that. And then she kissed me. It was a brief, chaste kiss, but it sent a jolt of electricity through my entire body. My heart pounded in my chest, my cheeks flushed, my senses reeling. I pulled away slightly, my eyes wide. Josie, I said, my voice trembling. She smiled, her eyes locking on mine. What? I don't know what to say. I stammered. You don't have to say anything, she said, taking my hand again. Just let me show you. She led me out of the garage, away from the noise and the crowd, into the cool night air. We walked hand in hand down the street, the neon lights of the city reflecting in our eyes. We stopped in front of a small park, a quiet oasis in the middle of the urban jungle. Josie led me to a bench beneath a towering oak tree and sat down, pulling me down beside her. The silence was comfortable, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of traffic. Josie turned to me, her eyes soft and tender. Luna, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know this is all happening fast, and I know you're probably scared, but I need you to know that I'm serious about this. About you. She paused, then added, I'm falling for you, Luna. Hard. My heart skipped a beat. Josie, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know what to say. Just say you feel it too, she said, her eyes pleading. Just say you feel something. I looked at her beautiful face, her kind eyes, her unwavering belief in me. And I knew that I couldn't deny it any longer. I do, I said, my voice barely audible. I feel something. I don't know what it is, but it's strong. Josie smiled, a radiant, breathtaking smile that lit up her entire face. That's all I needed to hear, she said, leaning in closer. And then, she kissed me again. This time, the kiss was different. This time it was deeper, more passionate, more electric. Her lips were soft and warm against mine, her tongue exploring my mouth with a gentle confidence that sent shivers down my spine. I closed my eyes and surrendered to the moment, letting the kiss wash over me, erasing all my doubts, all my fears, all my inhibitions. I was no longer the timid, awkward girl who hid behind books and glasses. I was Luna, the woman who was being kissed by Josie, the woman who was finally, truly alive. The kiss went on for what felt like an eternity, until we were both breathless and trembling. We pulled apart slowly, our eyes locked on each other. Wow, I said, my voice husky. Josie chuckled, her cheeks flushed. Yeah, she said. Wow is right. We sat there for a moment, just breathing, our hands intertwined. The city lights twinkled around us, creating a magical, surreal atmosphere. So, Josie said finally, breaking the silence. What happens now? I looked at her, my heart overflowing with a mixture of fear and excitement. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to find out. Josie smiled, squeezing my hand tightly. Me too, she said. Me too. And as we sat there, beneath the oak tree, bathed in the glow of the city lights, I knew that my life had changed forever. I was no longer just living in a beige world. I was living in a world of neon dreams, a world of passion, adventure, and, most importantly, love. And it was all thanks to the tattooed, motorcycle-riding woman who had stolen my heart. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of firsts. First dates that weren't really dates, impromptu motorcycle rides to hidden beaches, late-night stargazing sessions on Josie's garage roof, and stolen kisses in the rain. First introductions to each other's families, a predictably awkward dinner with my conservative parents, who eyed Josie with a mixture of suspicion and disapproval, and a surprisingly warm and boisterous barbecue with Josie's extended family, who embraced me with open arms. We navigated the challenges of our differences with patience and humor. I learned to appreciate the raw, unfiltered energy of Josie's world, while she, in turn, found a surprising solace in the quiet comfort of mine. She introduced me to the thrill of fixing a motorcycle engine, the camaraderie of the biker community, and the simple joy of living in the moment. I introduced her to the beauty of classical music, the power of literature, and the importance of slowing down and appreciating the small things. Our physical intimacy deepened, becoming a dance of exploration and vulnerability. Josie was patient and attentive, always mindful of my boundaries and insecurities. She taught me to trust my own desires, to embrace my sensuality, and to revel in the pleasure of our bodies entwined. One rainy Saturday, we found ourselves holed up in Josie's apartment, the sound of the rain drumming against the windows a soothing backdrop to our quiet intimacy. We were tangled in the sheets, our bodies slick with sweat, the air thick with the scent of desire. Josie traced the curve of my spine with her fingertips, sending shivers down my spine. "You're so beautiful, Luna," she whispered, her voice husky with passion. I blushed, feeling a surge of both pleasure and insecurity. "Don't," I murmured, trying to hide my face in her shoulder. Josie gently cupped my chin, forcing me to meet her gaze. "Don't what?" "Don't say things like that," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't believe you." Josie's expression turned serious. "Why not?" Because I'm not beautiful," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm just me. Josie smiled, a tender, loving smile that melted my heart.
You are you, she said.
And that's the most beautiful thing in the world. She leaned in closer and kissed me, a slow, lingering kiss that spoke volumes. It was a kiss that said, I see you. I accept you. I love you. As we deepened the kiss, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Gratitude, love, relief, and a deep sense of belonging. I had finally found someone who saw me, truly saw me, and loved me for who I was, flaws and all. Later that night, as we lay in each other's arms, the rain still falling outside, Josie told me about her dream. She wanted to open her own custom motorcycle shop, a place where she could build bikes that were both functional and works of art. I want to create something beautiful, Luna, she said, her eyes shining with passion. Something that lasts. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. I know you will, I said. You're incredibly talented, Josie. Thanks, she said, leaning in and kissing me softly. But I can't do it alone. I need you, Luna. Me? I asked, surprised. What can I do? You're smart, organized, and good with numbers, she said, grinning. You can handle the business side of things. I'll build the bikes, you'll run the shop. My heart skipped a beat. You really think I could do that? I know you can, she said, her voice unwavering. Besides, I can't imagine doing it without you. I thought about it for a moment, my mind racing. Leaving my stable, predictable job and venturing into the unknown world of entrepreneurship was a daunting prospect. But the thought of working alongside Josie, of building something together, was too tempting to resist. Okay, I said, my voice trembling with excitement. I'll do it. Josie whooped with joy and pulled me into a tight embrace. Yes, she exclaimed. This is going to be amazing, Luna. You and me building bikes and taking over the world. And so we did. We spent the next few months planning, saving, and preparing for our new venture. It was a challenging time, filled with long hours, stressful decisions, and moments of doubt. But we faced it together, supporting each other, encouraging each other, and reminding each other of our shared dream. Finally, the day arrived when we opened the doors to our new shop, Asphalt and Lavender Customs. The name was Josie's idea, a tribute to our contrasting worlds and the unlikely love that had brought us together. The shop was a success from the start. Josie's reputation as a skilled mechanic and talented artist drew customers from all over the city. My business acumen kept the shop running smoothly and efficiently. And our shared passion for motorcycles and for each other created a welcoming and inspiring atmosphere. Standing in the shop, surrounded by the roar of engines, the smell of gasoline, and the laughter of our customers, I felt a sense of fulfillment I had never known before. I had finally found my purpose, my passion, and my place in the world. And it was all thanks to Josie, the tattooed, motorcycle-riding woman who had crashed into my life and turned it upside down. She had shown me the beauty of the unknown, the thrill of adventure, and the power of love. As I looked at her, her hands covered in grease, her eyes shining with pride, I knew that I had made the right decision. I had chosen love over fear, passion over predictability, and a life of vibrant color over a world of beige. I walked over to her, wrapped my arms around her waist, and kissed her deeply. I love you, Josie, I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. Josie smiled, her eyes locking on mine. I love you too, Luna, she said. More than words can say. And as we stood there, in the heart of our own little world, surrounded by the sounds and smells of asphalt and lavender, I knew that our love story was just beginning. The road ahead may be long and winding, but we would face it together, hand in hand, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. Because we had each other, and that was all that mattered.